Hello, I've been wandering around in a swamp for 11 days and I'm starting to think I might be lost. Spyro is like a bear. When in his prime, he's powerful, impressive, and a force to be reckoned with. He also climbs trees sometimes. When in his lazy phase, he spends his time doing bugger all besides sleeping and shoving corks up his ass. He also falls out of trees sometimes. The Spyro series displays two very different sides of the same coin. One demonstrates the best it has to offer, the other demonstrates just how bad it can get. But that's the thing. When we look at a coin, we only look at the two sides. We focus on the two extremes, heads and tails, the best and the worst. But no one ever talks about the rim. Sometimes the coin lands on its side, and you end up with things that aren't good or bad, but instead, average. Now, admittedly, a coin landing on its side doesn't happen very often, but average levels do happen very often, so the analogy kinda breaks down there, but it's the best I could come up with. I think it's time for the average levels to get their turn in the spotlight. I've done top 10 best and worst Spyro levels, and now it's time to explore the perineum of average levels that joins them together. There are levels that aren't good or bad. There are levels that are just okay. There are levels that make you go, and here are 10 of them. Kicking us off at number 10 is Lost Fleet from Spyro Year of the Dragon. Lost Fleet is a pretty average level, which makes it a shoo-in for this list. It does feel a bit wrong to say that a level from the original trilogy is only average. I tend to celebrate them unless there's some kind of shitty bonus level. But Lost Fleet is one I'm actually not that fussed about. For most original trilogy levels I go, ooh. For Lost Fleet, it's more of an, It's a level that's just okay in every respect. It has some cool ideas, I like shipwrecks, and I find it mildly bemusing when a bunch of billionaires take a dodgy submarine down to visit them. But these shipwrecks aren't submerged. They're on what I assume is the coastline, so the appeal of exploring underwater shipwrecks is kind of ruined by that. The underwaterness is what makes them so appealing. If I wanted to see a wreck on land, I would just go look at a car crash. There is some liquid, whether it's sludge or radioactive water, I don't know, but I do know that you can swim in it with the protection of the protection power-up. It is kinda cool to explore these under nuclear water passages, but really it's no different to swimming in an actual water level. It's the same thing, you're just restricted in how long you can do it for, because if you stay in there too long, you'll die. Like the billionaires in that submarine. The actual structure of the level isn't something I'm all that keen on, it's alright, but it's not the most fun level to run through, especially when you have to deal with these lame-ass turrets. The side missions, even though they're Year of the Dragon signature vehicle bullshit, aren't actually too bad. The submarine leaves a lot to be desired, but the skateboard race can actually be kind of fun when you do it well. The only other thing about this level worth mentioning is its identity, or lack thereof. I like the idea of this level's theme, a shipwreck haunted by fake ghosts. Sounds like something out of Scooby-Doo. But Lost Fleet doesn't feel like it has an identity, and I think that's because of the lack of any unique music. Depending on the version of the game you're playing, you'll end up hearing either Super Bonus Round or a slightly different version of Sheila's theme, both of which don't really fit the whole shipwreck full of fake ghosts thing. So the whole thing doesn't end up feeling like anything, especially when set next to other levels, which is a shame because I sensed the potential in Lost Fleet, but it just didn't blossom, causing it to become average. So it turns out I actually have to come up with 9 more average levels to fill this list. So I guess for number 9 I'll pick Alpine Ridge from Spyro the Dragon. Alpine Ridge is, for me, the most forgettable level in the first Spyro game, and that's saying something because the first one is my favourite. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's bad, it just means that it doesn't do anything to warrant paying it any attention, like a child that doesn't have any talents. At a first glance, it makes me want to vomit. All of the level's geometry looks like it's been coated in mouldy flesh. It's a really gross combination of green and pink. It's the level that looks the most diseased in the original game. Reignited came along and cured that disease with a complete shift in colour scheme, and that is much appreciated, but the colour scheme is not the only thing that got shifted. It also shifted my focus, and exposed this level's design, structure and features as being pretty generic in the realm of Spyro. It has all the hallmarks of a traditional Spyro level, long glides, branching paths, nooks and crannies, egg thief, but it doesn't do anything remarkable with them. The long glides aren't as spectacular, the branching paths aren't as exciting to explore, the nooks and crannies tend to be something akin to a small pit, and the egg thief is just another egg thief. The only interesting thing that Alpine Ridge has is the wizards that manipulate the environment. That's not only a stretch of the definition of interesting, it's also not even unique to this level, because most Magic Crafters levels have them. I'm just trying to think, how would this level introduce itself at a business conference to help it stand out from the crowd? Hi, my name is Treetops, and I have an intricate web of supercharge ramps that encourage exploration. Hi, my name is Nasty's Loot, and while I may have the stupidest flight mechanics in the world, I am also the richest level here. Hi, my name is Alpine Ridge, and I look like I'm made out of rotten intestines. Like, what do you say there? The thing is though, while Alpine Ridge doesn't do anything better than any other Spyro 1 level, it doesn't do anything worse. It's not bad in any way, well, it looks quite bad. But besides that, it's inoffensive. I think it's fair to say that Alpine Ridge is pretty average. And fun fact, if you rearrange the letters in Alpine Ridge, it spells average. But only if you spell average wrong. Going from a game I love to a game I love to hate, coming in at number 8 is Spyro Enter the Dragonfly's Jurassic Jungle. Jurassic Jungle is at a massive disadvantage compared to most other Spyro levels, purely because it is from Enter the Dragonfly. Enter the Dragonfly is known for being a game that shut itself inside out, so for something from that game to be labelled as average is quite the achievement. Jurassic Jungle actually manages to be somewhat decent. Its theme isn't really all that interesting. Jungles, temples and molten lava caves have been done before in Spyro, but the addition of cyborg dinosaurs does help it to feel a bit different. As with every Enter the Dragonfly level, it possesses side missions. These are normally rubbish, but the ones in Jurassic Jungles aren't actually that bad. The volcano slide is probably the best side mission in the whole of Enter the Dragonfly. It has great music and some good gameplay. The tower climb is awful, to be honest, but it's not that bad when you compare it to some of the other shit in this game. It even borrows some concepts from Skelos Badlands, one of the best levels in the series. Just like that level, you can walk on lava without taking damage. It's a worse version of it, but I appreciate the nod to such a legendary level. Honestly, the level's biggest problems are the ones that plague every single level in Enter the Dragonfly. Everything is ridiculously big, flat and spread out, leading to a lot of empty space, meaning quite a lot of your time spent in the level will be running around in a rather boring environment gameplay-wise. It really is impressive how the developers managed to cram so much nothing into the game. Why would they make all the levels in the game so large, only for that extra space to not be used at all? There's nothing in any of Enter the Dragonfly's levels that warrant having this much space. Sometimes things pick up with the temple passages because you actually have to jump, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot going on. It's a pretty uneventful level in terms of structure. Basically what's happened here is Jurassic Jungle did some pretty cool things that were actually good by Enter the Dragonfly standards, but the very nature of Enter the Dragonfly itself meant that a lot of the experience was dragged down by its general incompetence, which really is a shame. If Jurassic Jungle was in an actually decent game, I reckon it could have been a very good level. Well, very good might be a stretch, but there's definitely potential there, so it sucks that Enter the Dragonfly had to go and fuck it up. Final verdict? Average. Up next at number 7 is Concurrent Skies from The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning. Concurrent Skies actually leads into the level that I claimed was the worst level in the entire series, that level of course being Convexity. But while Convexity is a steaming hot pile of boring nothingness, Concurrent Skies is... well, it's not a whole lot different from that, but at least it has some good things going for it. Firstly, I actually love the way it looks. I love the sight of the blue and purple crystal valleys, glowing amidst the dark and gloomy atmosphere. It's pretty cool. I can't even pretend to dislike that. The interior of Cinder's castle fortress isn't as spectacular, it's very monochrome, and from the floor tiling you can tell that it used to be a kitchen, but the actual architecture of the building itself is pretty cool and sufficiently edgy. Very gothic. What I also like about this level is that it's the prime opportunity to use the fully upgraded Earth Breath, since you only gain Earth Breath just before Concurrent Skies. It was here where I spammed the tornado attack, causing enemies to be flung around like plastic bags, being killed with a single hit. I really got a kick out of it. It's not any less repetitive than mashing the attack button as you would in other scenarios, but I just found it funny. Even Cinder didn't stand a chance against it. No one is safe from the power of Spyro's Earth Breath. But that is the only value to be found in this level. If you don't like the way it looks, and you also don't like fucking around with the Earth Breath, then this level is gonna be shit. Because all it is a never-ending gauntlet of the same enemies, over and 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 over. And over 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 and over. And over 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 and over. and over and over and over and over and over and over. And that's basically it, and it goes on for a long time. It's extremely repetitive, and the level makes no effort to make it interesting at all. You might try and trick yourself into believing that the lift is a solid bit of variety, but all it does is stall for time while the game loads the next army of apes. So Concurrent Skies has a pretty hefty downside, but a few upsides too. And you know what I reckon? I reckon they cancel each other out. Concurrent Skies' bad stuff cancels out the good stuff, basically leaving us with a neutral level. Or in other words, average. At our number 6 spot is another Legend of Spyro level, this time Floating Islands from Dawn of the Dragon. Floating Islands is the final level in the game before the final boss against Malefor, but it doesn't really feel like it. It doesn't really feel like anything, to be honest. As an actual level environment, it doesn't have anywhere near the amount of intimidation or gravitas that you would expect from a finale in a game whose story is supposed to be about the literal destruction of the world at the hands of the most evil dragon to have ever lived. This is just a collection of bits of castle floating on islands. It's basically just Lofty Castle if it had been ravaged by war. It doesn't look bad or anything, it just doesn't feel like a very climactic final level. The gameplay itself doesn't feel like that either. The whole point of the level is to go around the floating islands and light the 8 torches so that the door will open. You could go and defeat all the enemies if you wanted, but why the hell would you do that when they take so much effort to deal with? Any sane person would just fly directly to the torches and skip all the bullshit like I did. But unfortunately, once you open the door, you're forced into combat anyway, having to deal with enemies that take way too long to die. Like the rest of the game and the rest of the Legend of Spyro saga, the combat isn't great, and by this point in the game it's gotten old, so you're really not in the mood. After you defeat those enemies, a wall bursts open, allowing you to confront Malefor. So not only is the Floating Islands pretty unremarkable in terms of the gameplay it offers, it's also pretty short. It doesn't last long at all. Not that I want it to, because Christ. But, you know, you'd hope for something a little more bombastic than this as the final level of the trilogy. It doesn't do anything bad that the rest of the game doesn't already do, but when you compare it to decent Dawn of the Dragon levels like Ruins of Warfang, it really makes you wonder what the hell they were thinking. Also, I have to mention this. Dawn of the Dragon features free flying. You can free fly all the way through this level. This whole level takes place on islands in the sky. Could we not just go around? Fuck the torches and the enemies, why can't we just fly around or over that shit and go straight to Malefor? What's stopping us from doing that? Overall, Floating Islands really isn't anything special. It isn't a great level, but Dawn of the Dragon does have worse, and at least it's over before anything really starts to grate. Floating Islands gets an average out of 10. Halfway to most average, whatever the hell that means, is Stormy Beach, taking the number 5 spot. Stormy Beach is technically the final hub world in Spyro Hero's Tale, but it is unique among the hub worlds in that it really doesn't need to exist. Every other hub world in the game branches off into separate levels. They're also pretty expansive, and there's a lot to do in them. Stormy Beach doesn't really have that. It's much smaller, with really only 2 areas. You have this offshoot area that doesn't have a whole lot in it besides a bit of basic platforming, and then you've got the main area which has Moneybags' shop and a turret minigame. There isn't a whole lot in this level, and because all of the levels that Stormy Beach leads to are joined together linearly, there really is no reason for it to be here. If Spyro had just started at the entrance to Molten Mount, nothing of great importance would have been lost. That's not to say that the level itself is bad though, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Basic levels can still be fun, simple levels like Cliff Town rank among the best. So I don't hate playing Stormy Beach, it just needs more stuff for it to be considered good. There's a lot of empty space here, maybe it took inspiration from Jurassic Jungle. I do also like the theme. I think it's a better use of the shipwreck theme than Lost Fleet at least, because you're actually on the coast and can actually get in the water. The nighttime lighting with the lanterns is a nice contrast and gives off a mysterious mood. What's also mysterious is the music, which doesn't really fit the setting. It's too upbeat and wacky for this level, but in isolation it's not awful. The name also doesn't really fit. It's called Stormy Beach, but there's no storm. What's that about? It's like calling the Eiffel Tower the Flying Eiffel Tower. What about the Eiffel Tower is flying? It's the same with Stormy Beach. No storm, but it's in the name. What's going on? There is a beach though, so that part of the name makes sense. Normally I hate beaches. I hate the sand, I hate the wet sand, I hate putting my feet in the sand and the wet sand. It's truly a horrible sensation. But that didn't put me off Stormy Beach. For a level as small and insignificant as this one, Stormy Beach manages to be a pretty average level. Perhaps more on the below average side, but still within the realm of average. Well, howdy do, it's number 4, and filling that spot is Ancient Grove from The Legend of Spyro the Eternal Night. Ancient Grove is one of the few levels in Eternal Night that doesn't make me want to kill myself. I've never thought about doing that before, but a lot of Eternal Night's levels made me feel like I was already dead anyway. Ancient Grove manages to be quite tolerable though. It does suffer from the exact same problems that every Legend of Spyro level suffers from, being flooded with mindless and repetitive combat with precious little to break it all up. But despite being like that, Ancient Grove is surprisingly dynamic for a Legend of Spyro level. It starts off in a densely wooded area, which then leads into a confrontation with the pirates whose guts I hate. The pirate thing keeps coming up. There's even a shipwreck in this level. Why do I suddenly have such a fixation on pirates and pirate ships? Whatever. Eventually Spyro ends up in the treetops, jumping from branches and, for some reason, jellyfish. And afterwards he makes his way to another wooded area, much like the beginning, where he takes on Arboric, which is a mediocre boss, I'll be honest, but not the worst thing in the world. It's at the very least better than Toasty, and I'm sure you'd be able to make him into a lovely table and/or birdhouse. Normally levels in The Legend of Spyro don't make as much of an effort to shake things up like this. They usually stay pretty consistent with their themes, and they do not dare venture away from them or make any changes to how they look at any point, because if they did, they might accidentally make the levels interesting. Even though the color schemes and objects in the environment don't change too much, you do get to explore different parts of that environment, which helps Ancient Grove stand out, as it has more than your typical amount of variation. I also love the way it looks anyway. I love the lush, dark green combined with the bright, toxic purple. It's a cool combo that makes everything feel ominous and a little bit spooky. That said, none of this changes the fact that it is still very much a level from The Legend of Spyro the Eternal Night. That comes with a myriad of problems that hurt the overall experience, especially when it comes to the repetitive gameplay. But while this means that Ancient Grove won't ever outperform levels across the series that are genuinely good, it does at least manage to pull off being an average level overall, and one of the better levels in Eternal Night. I mean, there are only 6, so it's not that much of an achievement, but I'm trying to be nice here. Claiming the bronze medal of averageness is Tall Plains from The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning. Tall Plains is the second level from A New Beginning to make this list, but the reason it's higher up on it than Concurrent Skies is because it's more average. Tall Plains is an interesting one because I actually do like it, mainly for its atmosphere. Thematically it does seem quite generic, as the whole thing is comprised of grassy plains, caverns and peaks, with the occasional temple here and there too. It doesn't really seem like much, but when you combine it with the subtle soundtrack that plays here, it works together pretty well. The soft flutes and drums really make the atmosphere. It feels mysterious, like you're on an adventure. I really like the presentation of this level. If I had to pick a level from A New Beginning to live in, it would be this one. Not that I want to settle in the lands of the native people and claim the land as my own or anything. That would be fucked up. There's no way someone of European blood like myself would ever do something like that. It is a nice place though, but the more you look at it, the more you realize that it's just Ancient Grove during the day. Granted, there is no toxic purple sludge, but there are a lot of similarities between them, what with all the grass and trees and such, making them both feel a bit less special. Or more average, if you will. I am a bit fonder of Tall Plains though. I like that it attempts to do something a bit different by including puzzles and traps. It wasn't a great attempt, but an attempt is better than nothing. You can't learn to swim if you don't get in the water. Plus, this also happens to be where I had the most fun with the electric breath, flinging enemies off of ledges, killing them instantly. I love instantaneous death, so it gets bonus points for that in a similar way to Concurrent Skies. But like every other level in the Legend of Spyro series that I've talked about so far, it's the repetitiveness of the gameplay that brings it back down to earth. I'm getting repetitive talking about how repetitive everything is. What a nightmare. But it is repetitive, especially when you get to the pirate ship that bombards you with loads of enemies. Hang on, this level has a pirate ship in it too. Have I been brainwashed to only be thinking about pirates or something? What's happening to me? Aside from that, Tall Plains is an average level, which would explain why it's so high on the list. Our silver medalist comes from the world of the handhelds, and it's Dreamy Castle from Spyro 2 Season of Flame. Dreamy Castle is one of those levels that just completely escaped my memory, and of course it did. What did it do to be worthy of occupying some of my brain wrinkles? Upon closer inspection of this level, it's clear that it's very average. Season of Flame is, in my opinion, the best Spyro game on handhelds, but Dreamy Castle doesn't really do a good job of demonstrating that. The level's main objective is to help the mayor of Dreamy Castle get down from his hot air balloon that's gone rogue. You do this by chasing him around the map and flaming his balloon when you can get close enough. It sounds like your pretty standard Spyro mission, sounds like it could even be fun. But when you realise that it involves running around a map that is literally a circle and waiting for platforms to lift you up, most people would probably lose interest. Which kinda sucks because the rest of the fireflies you earn in this level are from doing the same things you'd be doing in every other level. Breaking certain objects, finding them just hanging around, it's all very run-of-the-mill. The only other interesting thing this level has to offer is the timed platforming challenge, and that isn't even unique to Dreamy Castle because the same thing appears in Haunted Hills, and it's better there. So the only thing that Dreamy Castle has to help it stand out is its presentation, and while it may be thematically unique among levels in Season of Flame, it's not unique among levels in the whole series. What is the Spyro series' obsession with sleepy castles in the sky? The first game had a whole hub called Dreamweavers, a world full of sleepy castles in the sky. It's not that good of a theme, people, we don't need to keep doing it. If it had a more interesting layout that wasn't just a big loop, if it had some cooler Firefly objectives, and if it had a more unique theme, Dreamy Castle might have fared a bit better as a level. But it's not actually bad though. Season of Flame's gameplay is generally really good, and Dreamy Castle is a part of Season of Flame. It's just that when it comes to the levels in Season of Flame, Dreamy Castle is just more of the same, and that's why it's at the number 2 spot. It's average, and 4. What? Oh, sorry, my cat wrote that. I was supposed to delete it, and I didn't. Before I announce the most average level in the series, I should note that there were many more levels I considered placing in the top 10 most average levels, but I couldn't, because even though they were average, they weren't average enough to be the most average. So I'd like to honour some of the average levels that weren't average enough to be the most average by naming them as honourable mentions. What the fuck am I doing? Celestial Caves from The Legend of Spyro the Eternal Night. This is the other level from Eternal Night that didn't make me hate existing in this mortal plane, but that was only when I played it the second time. The first time I played this game I quit before reaching the end, and Celestial Caves was the level I quit on because I simply couldn't be asked to put up with the game anymore. It was my breaking point. But now that I've played it again, on the Wii, I can say that Celestial Caves isn't actually that bad. It's unique in that it forces you to use certain breaths for certain challenges, and that's kind of all that's unique to it. It also wasn't great to look at, being mostly comprised of murky, crumbling ruins, and the music I don't even remember, but beyond that, it was alright. Something different. Cloud Temples from Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer. It seems blasphemous to say a level from Spyro 2 is simply average, and in most cases I would agree, but Cloud Temples? I'm not really sure why it exists. It's a forgettable level that feels unnecessary. The temple theme has been done before in Spyro 2, and Colossus knocked it out of the park. I'll admit that the music in Cloud Temples is great, as are the 2 side missions, one involving stealth and the other involving ice breath, but other than that, Cloud Temples doesn't really have anything to offer that other levels haven't already nailed, causing it to fade into the background and feel average. It's better than most levels in the series for sure, but among Spyro 2's levels, this is what average feels like. Monkey Monastery from Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. I had actually originally considered this for the number 8 spot, but instead decided to swap it out for Jurassic Jungle. Being from Enter the Dragonfly, it comes riddled with issues by default, but Monkey Monastery is one of the more tolerable levels from the game. Its structure is half decent, it has pleasant music, there are monkeys. I like monkeys. But there are a couple of reasons why I swapped it out for Jurassic Jungle. The first is that the side missions are worse than Jurassic Jungle's, and also, this happened to me. I've spoken about this before, but in this level, my game absolutely shat itself. I don't think anyone would look at this and think, yeah, this is an average level. It's too much of a disaster to be average. And here we finally are, taking the number 1 spot, and the title of the most average Spyro level is Dusty Trails. Dusty Trails is one of the levels from Spyro Season of Ice, and if you've played Season of Ice, you won't need any more explanation. But I'm assuming a lot of people haven't played it, so allow me to elaborate. Let me start by saying that pretty much every level in Season of Ice is exactly the same thing. They all basically have the same missions and gameplay, with precious little besides their presentation to differentiate them. There are some outliers that are actually worse to play due to their layout, but most of the time they don't feel any different to each other. At the same time, they tick all of the boxes of what a Spyro level should be. They're open, they have gems, they have some other collectible that's related to the story. That's pretty much it. Those are the hallmarks of a Spyro level, and all levels in Season of Ice possess them. Aside from the speedways. But since it would be lame to give the number 1 spot to every Season of Ice level, I've had to make up my mind based purely on presentation. which is hard because most of the levels lack any landmarks or anything of interest at all. All there really is are floor patterns, decorations, and colours, and that's what this is going to come down to. There are some Season of Ice levels that have some gorgeous colours and features. There are some that are absolutely disgusting, like someone vomited on some vomit. But some are just completely unremarkable, and the most unremarkable of all is Dusty Trails. Dusty Trails goes for a sort of Wild West theme, and features a lot of muted, earthy colours, focusing mainly on yellows and browns. It's not so pretty that it's pleasing to your eyes, but it's not so ugly that it makes you want to pour bleach into them. The music is in a similar boat, where it's not so good that you'll be whistling along to it the next time you find yourself stuck in a well, but it's not so bad that it makes you want to pour bleach into your eyes again. On top of all of that, it's a level that's tucked away towards the end of the game where most people will likely completely forget about it. Dusty Trails, no matter which way you look at it, could not be any more average. It's not great, but it's not awful. It's not overly fun, but it's not overly boring. It's not inoffensive, but it's not inoffensive. It is the Spyro series' true neutral, and the most average level of them all. Well, that was an anticlimax. I don't know why I thought spending an entire top 10 talking about average Spyro levels would yield anything other than an average experience. And it's not like it was easy, it was hard trying to pick out levels where the good and the bad were sort of evenly balanced, not just in the context of their own games, but also in the greater context of the entire series. I could have spent that time contributing to society. Some people are doctors, you know. What am I doing? But I've done it now, so I may as well share it with the world. Now, how the fuck do I get out of this swamp?